This is Beyond a Reasonable Doubt with your hosts, Mark Garrigus and Gary Smith.
Well, happy Easter on the at the altar of BARD on the special day for rebirth and renewal. Gary, how are you?
I'm well, Mark. How are you? Thank you very much. Happy Easter to you as well. Happy end of Lent.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I since we jump-started 2 days early in the Armenian Church, I jump-started the breaking 2 days early. So
good.
Yes, it's well worth it. Have you done an Easter egg hunt?
We've found an Easter egg basket, and the hunt is yet to come. I think we probably have maybe 2.5 hunts today around the various households we'll be going to.
I love it. And what is in the Easter eggs? What is the it's been so many years since I've done an Easter egg hunt. Tell me what's inside the eggs at this point.
Well, at this point, it's still sort of, we try to stay a little bit traditional. So candy, mostly, a few little toys, a Hot Wheels monster truck in one of the more exotic eggs maybe. But we try to stick to Starbursts and Crunch Bars and stuff like that. And I'm sure once we get to the grandparents' house, it'll be a different story. But around here, we try to keep it to what we remember from our childhood.
I love it. Okay. Well, we're still, I know that the last episode we had just seen the indictment of President Trump. What has happened since then, I suppose, has been a lot of talk about that indictment. And in the last day or so, there's been talk about the potential Georgia indictment as well, where at least 20 people, I don't think this is news, although it's being reported as breaking news, because previously when the foreperson was doing her tour, it was indicated, or it was being reported at that point, that there were various or numerous people who were being informed that they were a target. And so people understand the differences with the nomenclature. When you have a grand jury and you have an investigation, you're issuing subpoenas, there are various levels. One is a witness. A witness, generally, you do not have, if the prosecutor represents it as a witness, you don't have you're basically assured that you don't have anything to worry about. I always laugh about that, but because you can quickly graduate from a witness to a subject, and the subject is somebody who's basically, you're involved more than a witness, but you haven't subjected yourself or been targeted, and that is you could graduate to that, which is to be a target of the grand jury. Once you're a target of the grand jury, in most jurisdictions, federal and state, you the prosecutor has the duty to inform you that you are a target. You generally should have lawyered up already, and then there are various moves that have to be made. And some of those moves are, if you're a target, you're invited into the grand jury, a la what happened with Trump in New York, where he declined to go in, And by the way, when you go in, depending on the jurisdiction, there are various other machinations that go on, whether you invoke the Fifth, whether you get immunity, whether or not you can have your lawyer sitting next to you, things of that nature. That varies in the criminal.
Karen told us in New York that you're allowed to have your lawyer there. They're just not allowed to speak, right?
Correct, which is mind-boggling to me, but they do a lot more indictments on the state side than we do in California or in other jurisdictions. The federal, they not only do they not let the lawyer in, but oftentimes you don't even know when the grand jury is indicted. Interestingly, there's also been this week a lot of talk about the judge, because the judge is a contributor to the Biden campaign. I believe his daughter has, it's been identified by, and when I say contributor, it's not a huge contribution, but he's a contributor nonetheless. I believe $15, what is being reported. His daughter actually has a connection. There's been a lot of people that have been lambasting Trump and his team for bringing that up as an attack on the judge or an attack on the judge's family. I'm not talking about how they frame it, but it would be malpractice for the lawyers or the law team that's defending him to not raise those issues. How in the world are you, if you're defending someone who's accused based on a case that most legal experts that I have seen, and I had mentioned to you, I was talking to several former federal or retired former judges who also, and actually a state court judge just yesterday, who agree with the assessment that I have that this is legally not only a stretch, but that the whole theory on the statute of limitations that the prosecutor has is unbelievable. I mean, you have to assert or believe, or the prosecution is going to have to prove they didn't know where he was during the time period, because clearly the statute, at least on its face, is run unless you're going to invoke COVID emergency tolling provisions.
Right. Yeah. And, I agree the amount of the contribution is definitely low and seems like it wouldn't be a big deal. But, his daughter, I believe, volunteered and was working for the campaign at one point. So, yeah, if you're a defense attorney or an attorney representing a client, that probably needs to come up.
Well, not only needs to come up, but it goes to how people always talk about whether it's an actual bias, and the law makes a distinction, or the appearance. And this is clearly the appearance. And you've got somebody who's already the announced candidate for one party. You've got somebody who is clearly the front runner for that party. You've got him contributing to the opponent, and it's somebody who's appearing in front of him. And you combine that with the fact that he's got a close family member. Mind you, I'm not bringing up things that aren't in the law. The law has, for judicial recusals and for the judicial canons of ethics, it talks about what is a family member for purposes of recusal or appearance of bias or actual bias. Those are all things that are fair game, that are part of judicial canon of ethics and can be brought up. Right? That doesn't mean you threaten the people, doesn't mean you do anything else, but it is not off limits legally to talk about these things.
Right. So how do you see, let's just stick with the one that's, actually gotten there so far, which is New York. How do you see the next, 6 to 12 months playing out? Because I've heard pundits opining that this is not going to see a courtroom anytime, in some cases, for several years.
I don't see how this goes before primary season.
Right.
I just don't see the challenges to jurisdiction, and jurisdiction in terms of the statute of limitations, whether or not, in fact, it's a felony, whether or not they have to, one of the first things they're going to do, because it's a grand jury indictment, you have the ability to demand what's called a bill of particulars. It's the ancient theory that you can't just indict somebody and not tell them what the charges are. That was part of what formed the basis for the Constitution of the Republic. And so the bill of particulars is to demand that the prosecutor tell you basically what's up. And the first thing that they're going to focus on is what is the other crime that elevates these kind of ministerial misdemeanors to a felony. How is it that you are going to charge 34 counts, felony counts, if you do not identify what the crime is? People have said, well, that's a very, he can do it later. He can do it at some, he can keep his options open, he being the prosecutor. No, you can't do that. You don't get to indict somebody, go to trial without having to define what it is you're charged with, number one, and what your defense is. And why do I say that? Well, it's already been speculated. It's a number of things. Is it the federal election? Well, if that's what they're relying on, then there is a full frontal assault that is going to be done in the defense, talking about the fact that a state prosecutor does not have the ability to enforce federal election laws. So then you say, well, okay, it's not a federal election law. Okay, so I've ticked that off, so I don't have to worry about that. It's a state election law. Well, it's a state election law that governs a federal election. Is that an issue? That would be the next portion. So tell me if that's it. Then if you say, well, the state election law for the federal does not apply, then I'm going to get them on tax. Well, okay, then tell me what the tax count is, because to the best of my understanding, even though they kept the records of the payment internally as a legal expense, I'm told, and this would be very interesting, that they did not deduct it on the tax return. So where is the tax violation? So then you say, well, this was hiding it from the taxing authorities, hiding it from the, if that is the issue, you got a major problem. Hiding something from the taxing authorities is not a crime unless there's an intent. You got to have the intent to defraud. If you're not deducting the payment, then that's a major problem. So that's just kind of leading you through the very first. Then you're going to get an assault and on the statute of limitations, because arguably we're talking 7 years old. The statute would have been blown. Are they going to say that no, the statute isn't blown because there was a COVID, when the COVID emergencies happened, basically for the, you heard this a zillion times with me and Adam, we basically suspended the writ of habeas corpus. So for the first time in so many years. And so while doing that, the suspension of the writ of habeas corpus comes with it. Part of the accoutrement, if you will, is the statute of limitations, which I still think there's no way that should have been ruled acceptable, because it has obliterated the idea of an emergency, and basically it obliterated the idea of statute of limitations, but they're going to challenge on that basis.
Yeah, I was chuckling there because you sound a lot like the channels that I assume you're not a fan of. It's, the defense attorney part is coming out in you, and you're breaking this down in a way that, there is a lot of different turns and twists where this seems to unravel if you think about it logically and critically.
I do, and by the way, I do sound like the channels that I do not channel.
Yeah.
And the reason for that, and I've said it for, you've heard me pontificate about it, something has happened in this world during my career where we went from the being a good liberal Democrat, and that portion of the party challenged authority, challenged law enforcement, challenged the idea of government overreach, and had a distrust for government, to we have now come full circle. We're now the liberal Democratic wing, and we embrace law enforcement. We embrace having the idea that you don't challenge authority. It's kind of a wild pendulum swing.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it's just it's not humorous, but it's if you don't have a sense of humor about it, it'll drive you crazy. There you go. That's very fair. It's not humorous, but if you can't laugh at it, then you're going to go absolutely out of your mind.
Bonkers. And anyway, on Tuesday, I've got a lot more to say, but it's Easter. I'll let everybody go. Happy Easter. And
Happy Easter.
You, Gary, and enjoy the little one today. It's fantastic.
Thank you very much, Mark. You enjoy your granddaughter as well, and enjoy your Easter egg hunt. Thanks for the time on Easter, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Reasonable Doubt. Subscribe on YouTube at youtube.com/Reasonable Doubt Podcast.